So on my watch, unless it's e-waste, it would be 3:05. So I would suggest we get going because there's a lot that we have to cover today and we don't want to run out of time. So hello and welcome everyone. My name is Suzanne Kasha. I'm a co-founder of the African Circular Economy Network, and I'm also national coordinator of the SHRI project here in South Africa, which is all about e-waste, and you'll hear a bit more about it later because I'm double booked as a facilitator and a panelist. So it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Circular Economy workshop entitled Circularity in Africa, Electronics. And for those that have not been introduced to ACEAN before, I would like to take the opportunity to give you a very brief background of who we are and what we do. ACEAN was established in 2016, a small group of us as a non-profit company registered in South Africa. Little did we know, but ACEAN now operates in 33 countries across Africa, over 100 experts in its network. And our purpose is to build a restorative and circular economy for Africa that generates well-being and prosperity inclusive of all its people and through new forms of economic production and consumption, which maintain and regenerate its environmental resources. This is achieved through research, training, knowledge sharing, networking, and capturing and reporting circular economy case studies. Our membership-based network brings together people from the private, public, and not-for-profit sectors who have ambitions to accelerate the just transition to a circular economy in Africa through collaboration and implementation of projects. My colleague will post a few links in the chat for you to get more details on how to be part of our exciting network and keep up to date with us on our activities and the different membership options. And yes, one of them is absolutely for free, so that you can apply for. So please have a look there, what is posted for more information. And then I want to draw our attention to one of our most recent achievements, which we are all terribly proud of, because ACEAN is now being invited to co-host this year's WCEF, standing for World Circular Economy Forum. And it's an annual global initiative of Finland through the Finnish government, funded by Sitra. And the first forum took place in 2017 and brought together a global audience to chart a course for a sustainable and resource-efficient economy. This year, drum roll, for the first time, drum roll, ever, this World Circular Economy Forum will be held in Africa from the 6th to the 8th of December, titled From Africa to the World. So the forum will be held in Kigali, Rwanda, and online at the same time, with the global studios that can be arranged worldwide and specific African studios that will be organized by ACEAN all across Africa. And alongside Citra and ACEAN, this year's forum will be co-hosted by the African Circular Economy Alliance, the Republic of Rwanda, and other international partners. As you might have seen, today's workshop is an official side event of the forum, hence the logo that you can see. And this is the fourth workshop of a 5-part series that will follow the themes of ACEA's famous report called the Big 5 Bets for the Circular Economy, which covers fashion and textiles, food systems, electronics, packaging, and the built environment. These workshops have been taking place since July already, leading up to the main forum in December, and we will share details on these at a later stage. The aim of today's workshop is to build momentum for the WCF and stimulate conversation on circularity, specifically in the electronics sector in Africa. And we do this by focusing on a few successful circular initiatives in the industry and talking through barriers to entry and opportunities that are available. Before I hand over to Deborah, our moderator, and Piotr, also our moderator, we have two moderators today, I want to share with you a few housekeeping rules for the session today. Please note we are recording the session, and by staying online, you are consenting automatically to being recorded. And please be active in the chat. This workshop lives from your activities too. So open discussions we'll be having later, but please start sharing via the chat function any comments or questions that you have at any time. And at the end of the day, we all work towards the same goal, accelerating the transition to a circular economy. So the more we share now in a space like this and learn from each other, the better for all of us. So without further ado, I would like then to give the floor to Deborah to introduce herself, and Piotr Marczak from the EU Environmental Bureau, and Deborah is from Footprints. So please, colleagues, over to you.
Thank you, Susan. And hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Like Susan said, my name is Deborah Winati, and I work with Footprints Africa as a research analyst. And at Footprints, our aim is to see a regenerative world. And we do that through two major outlets. Locally here in Ghana, we have a program, a business support program, using the B Core as a guide to support businesses to improve their social and environmental impact. But on the other hand, we also support businesses by trying to accelerate the transition of Africa to a circular economy. And we have been doing this through three main areas. We started by trying to build database and build evidence of the circular economy. So currently we have a database of circular economy initiatives that has over 500 initiatives. You can get that on our website. We also have some thematic reports that we started writing to capture the concept of circular economy in Africa. And then we also are supporting businesses to measure their circular economy, to measure the impact. So we don't just want to share the story that this is what circular economy is doing, but we also want to share statistics and prove that circular economy benefits or has great benefits to the continent. And lastly, we are supporting businesses or entrepreneurs by training them so that they can advance or improve their circularity as entrepreneurs or as businesses. So that's what we do at Footprints. And I mentioned the measurements work that we started. We just released the reports to share what we've been doing, the pilot work, and we hope to do more in that area. So that's about Footprints. And like I said, I'm the research analyst, so I've been more engaged in the circular economy space and the work that is ongoing there. And I look forward to having a great engagement with you. So Piotr, I would hand over to you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Deborah. Yes, welcome everyone. And just to say here that I will support Deborah and organizers in this webinar, which is long webinar, but it's good because we have good discussions. We wait for your questions. The chat will be very active, so I will also monitor the chat. And about me, I'm Piotr. I work at the EEB, European Environmental Bureau, based in Brussels, but with a network mainly in Europe, but also globally, including the African Circular Economy Network. So yeah, I look forward for the discussion. Also, one thing, because we work on many streams, waste streams, from plastic to organic to electronics. For what is relevant today, electronics, we run a big campaign that is called Right to Repair, but we will talk about that later today. So Deborah, over to you to introduce the panelists and the case studies.
Thank you. I was going to give it back to Susan for the program introduction.
Sure. So now follows a very quick introduction of what this is all about. As we know, e-waste, better known as we better known as e-waste, similar to the global trend, is one of the fastest growing waste streams also here in Africa. And what makes it such a fascinating one is that it's a complex composition of many materials, including a variety of metals, some of which are precious metals and even rare metals, plastics, glass, even rubber and ceramics, which many of them bearing many opportunities as a technical nutrient to re-enter a circular economy and to circulate in a circular economy context. However, when we mismanage, and it becomes increasingly evident and visible all over the world, e-waste also brings with it serious challenges and dangers, for example, regarding negative environmental health and safety implications from some of the materials that are contained in electronic waste. African municipalities, many of which already struggle with the basics of municipal solid waste management, are typically completely not equipped or capacitated to deal with e-waste in a phase of a ferociously increasing appetite for new electronics, also in Africa. Therefore, similar to other countries in the world that, for example, are already governed under policies such as the WE Directive for more than 20 years, more and more African countries, fortunately, have now also singled out e-waste as a waste stream that has to be governed and financed via extended producer responsibility regulations, thus making the producer legally responsible from a financial or physical perspective or both for a product to the post-consumer stage of the product. And this workshop will now explore e-waste from all the circular angles up and down the value hill, so to speak. And case studies will be presented and later discussed via the panelists. And we're starting with the most innovative aspects of the circular economy, which is anchored in the product innovation as part of the value hill. Then we will ask experts to investigate opportunities for keeping equipment and components alive for so much longer, which is the second best guess, because functionality saving over material saving is definitely preferred and needs to be pushed much harder in the African space. And then finally, we will unpack how value recovery from waste, just in form of material value, must be organized here in Africa so that it can be maximized and provide real benefits, not to the rest of the world, but to Africans. So, Deborah, I'm back to you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And just like Susan said, we have a packed program and would invite everyone to participate actively. Also in the chats, please do drop your questions. We are putting those together to be answered later in the session when it's time for the Q&A. So before we start, I would want to go around the table for our first, we have our case study, which is going to come from Tracy. So hi, Tracy.
Hi, Deborah. Thank you so much for this great opportunity to share our story.
It's not true. Not school area. Not school area. Not in picture there. Not in there.
Would you like me to start and go ahead?
Yes, please. I think you must go ahead, Tracy. There's some noise in the line. Can you all please switch off your microphone?
Okay, thanks everybody. It's lovely to be here and to share our story, as I mentioned. What I'm going to do is just to give a bit of context of where we are. I have a short video to show you a little bit about our organization, which is called Taking Care of Business. And we've just gone through a whole rebranding program because our name was originally the Clothing Bank, and that was actually limiting us. So the timing was right, and it's been a really good process to show us that there's so many more opportunities out there for us to support the circular economy, as well as our social foundation, which is kind of the core of what we do. So here we go.
We are more than clothing, more than appliances or fabric or things. We're about dignity, independence, personal agency, and sustainability. We are in the business of empowering the people who are raising the next generation. That's why the Clothing Bank is now TCB. Taking care of business. New name, same foundations, and a renewed commitment to impact and sustainability. Our new name unites us, serving the entire family as we equip aspiring entrepreneurs with the skills and resources they need to unlock their potential and access the economy. We believe that when we take care of small businesses, we take care of families so that they can escape the cycle of poverty for good. It's a journey, and it's worth it. We are ready for a bright and impactful future as TCB, taking care of business.
Right, so Taking Care of Business, we're a non-profit organization, a social enterprise, and we are equipping aspiring entrepreneurs with the skills and the resources they need to unlock their full potential and access the economy. So we're very much focusing on supporting unemployed South Africans. We know that our unemployment crisis is massive, and self-employment is definitely a solution to our current situation. And if you're focusing on families who are at the core of our economy, we are going to be able to break that cycle of poverty. And there are so many stories that we have seen of how we've been able to equip people with the tools they need to eradicate poverty in their lives. So it's been a very inspirational journey that we are on. So currently we actually have 4 programs. It's a resell program. Resell is very much focused on getting pre and post consumer waste from our retail partners. We have a remake program where we're getting excess, mostly pre-consumer waste, which is fabrics and trims from our partners, and we're recruiting seamstresses into that program. And we have a kind of a left field program called Grow Early Childhood Development, where because we wanted to focus on the whole family, the Grow ECD is helping children in creches and principals to establish strong creches that are giving quality education to children. So by the time they get to grade 1, they are really ready, and they are helping the principals to sustain their models as well. So this particular program that we're talking about today is Repair. So Repair is equipping unemployed South Africans to run appliance repair businesses and trade with this excess consumer waste stock that's out there in the market. So they're learning a lifelong skill to repair appliances. So with the Repair program, it is very holistic. So we're taking a holistic approach to development. Our big focus is on working with unemployed men. And we obviously also recruit women into the program. It's very much a lot of fathers that are joining the program right now. And what we're doing is we are collecting stock from our retail partners or customer returns. We then sort this into various different categories. So obviously some are easy to repair, others have just got a scratch on them, and others need to be recycled. So we're sorting. During the sorting process, we make sure that we debrand everything. So we don't, for various reasons, we are debranding. And I know as South Africans, we are very brand aware consumers. However, it's been interesting to see that debranding has not limited people from trading in these products, because obviously you are now able to sell appliances into lower income communities that can now afford these appliances. So it's amazing to see the households are now also getting household assets, which is also supporting women in the communities who are working all day, coming home from work, and now their lives are making their lives a little bit easier. So that's also been nice to see the ripple effects of this particular program. So we're distributing to all of our traders and everybody that's our beneficiaries in the program. Developing is a core of obviously what we do. We've very much focused on technical skills, very practical. There is theory as well, obviously involved in that. And with the development, it's also about basic business skills, financial literacy. It's about life skills, offering extra support through coaching and mentoring. So we wanted to create this ecosystem that allows people to come and heal and learn and grow. So it's very much, we're all pieces in the puzzle and we're all working on this journey together. So we've just been incredible to have the most amazing people coming in, our mentors, our coaches, facilitators. We've just seen so much commitment and passion, and the transformation has been astounding. So it's all about also sustaining these entrepreneurs so that they become financially and socially independent for their businesses. There is quite a long journey that people are going through. It's a two-year deep journey in our program. We do a lot of induction. Year 1 is basic business skills. It's anything learning from a kettle all the way to a fridge over the 2 years. So it's a deep dive into everything that we do. And it's really holding people in a safe space. That is what we're finding very impactful. And everybody gives back by volunteering in the organization. So it's a full-time program. So once a week you're in class, once a week you are working in the facility, debranding stock, receiving it, et cetera, testing it. Once a week you've got coaching and mentoring. And then obviously you're coming in to select stock and you're going out and trading. So you've got to have grit. You've got to keep going for 2 years in this program. And we're working a lot, as I mentioned, on the personal growth as well as the professional development. So the personal growth, you start to see when you're creating this environment, people's anxiety starts to drop And when your anxiety drops, you start to make healthy decisions and healthy choices. So that's what is so impactful to see that happening. On the road to success, there are many challenges, as we know. Basic business skills are important. Technical skills are obviously critical. And knowing how to grow your business, because sometimes we get to a point where we get stuck and we don't know how to keep moving forward. And that's where your mentors and your coaches can help a lot. Self-belief is really important, very important. Becoming self-aware. What are my strengths? And how do I use those strengths to keep growing myself and my business? Access to feeder stock at a reasonable price can be quite a challenge. We would love to scale this program, but we need to source feeder stock, more feeder stock into the program. We don't get as much feeder stock in this particular program as we do in our resale program. So we're working a lot in this industry to create more awareness of what we're doing. And then helping people to kickstart their businesses with access to your funding is quite important. So we do give everybody a kickstart by having access to a certain amount worth of stock after the first induction process. So finding customers can also be very challenging for people. And then also convincing your family to support you, because obviously our unemployment crisis being so massive, if someone is coming to the client's program every day and not coming home with an income, you're going to be questioned in your family. So we're trying to get the family to understand that it needs about 3 months to actually get your business to start becoming quite profitable. So there's also obviously challenges there. And then finding business ideas that work. We've got to keep innovating. We've got to keep innovating. And if you come from a place, if we come from empathy, then we can start to explore, and then we navigate and we innovate. And the thing is then to activate. So that's what we're always trying to do. We've got amazing people that implement a lot of our projects, and we adapt. We're very agile, so we can make the changes that need to happen, because nothing can be set in concrete. As our repair program, just to give you some sense, since 2015, we have received over 600,000 items from our retail partners. The men in our program have made over 20 million rands worth of profits over the time. The average profit per month, which is actually quite conservative, that people are making is about 8,000 rand a month. And then currently we have 239 men active in the program and 3 suppliers. Three, I would say, regular suppliers. We do get bits and bobs from other suppliers as well. So we would really like to grow that program. And now we've taken the courage to pilot a project in our East London branch. And we don't have partners there with our retailers that can give us feeder stock. So we've now been going local, and a few stores have put up bins, and local people in communities are now donating their appliances to this program. So that's going to be a nice pilot test to see if this is going to work from the consumer level. We already recruited, I think, about 25 men and women into that program, high energy. So that's good. And just as I mentioned earlier, we're working with the head, heart, and hands. That is our model. We're very much focusing on the head side, which is the technical skills, financial and business skills. The heart is focusing on life skills, life coaching, and even deeper counseling if that is needed, because lots of people have been through trauma. And then the hands is the practical experience. So having access to the resources of quality stock at affordable prices, volunteering, active trading, business mentoring, and those technical skills that are so needed to make sure that your business is worthwhile. A lot of people in our program obviously are trading, but what we've noticed over time is people are now starting to earn even more income from repairing appliances within their communities than trading. So obviously people have got different skills. Some of us are really good at selling and some are good at the technical side. So what we're noticing is that the guys and the women that are very good at the technical side are now repairing in their communities as well. So with reduce, reduce, recycle, reducing e-waste must start with repairing. There's a lot of products that are going to be recycled, that could be repaired. And that is how it's essential if we want to keep things out of landfills for longer. So really want to focus on that. And that's why with this extended producer responsibility, that's also created a lot of awareness, and that there's good, healthy conversations happening now. So we can appreciate that, and we've joined the extended producer organizations to see if we can also get our name out there a little bit more. So it's very much emphasizing the importance on reusing before recycling. Creating power partnerships is at the core and very, very important. Collaboration can make us leapfrog our success. and our impact. And then just identifying these different routes that can make the repair more accessible and more affordable. So we keep constantly trying to network and reach out there so that we can start building relationships. There are so many amazing stories that we can tell. So if you ever want to go and have a look at our website, please have a look at our website and see there's some stories of people really making big changes. You know, all we can do is put the tools down and people pick them up and they make the businesses work for themselves. There's a massive, huge chunk of people in our country, in Africa, that have so much potential and they just need to be given and connected to opportunities. You know, I'll just give you a little story. Years ago, we often had Stanford University students coming and volunteering. And we had a woman volunteering in Cape Town, and a partner for hers was volunteering at a creche in Khayelitsha. And he started to write a book, because children always speak the truth, don't they, when you ask them a question. And he was asking children lots of questions. And one of the questions he asked was, okay, so what is it like living in Cape Town? And the response was, we don't live in Cape Town, we live in Khayelitsha. That actually makes me emotional, because that shows you so much how people are not connected to our economy. You're not connected to the city that gave you birth. So we've got to shift so many things to tackle our inequality. It's so important to do that. And children, that made me also really feel there's so much more that we need to do and can do to own the space that we're in. So quickly, that's a quick nutshell of what we do. So thank you very much. I don't know if there's any questions or later.
Yes, Siyabonga. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful presentation, and I just kept nodding throughout. The chat box people have been bombarding the place with questions, but we'll take that later when it's time for Q&A. I think what stood out for me in your presentation is the repair model that is supposed to stretch the lifetime of appliances, and that is a circular principle. And the fact that you were focused on people, that was very powerful to see. And the family unit is beautiful. And I also see the mentorship and development aspect of it. Thank you so much. And I see you're very passionate about what you do. We'll meet you later in the panel discussion. So we'll move on to the next case study, which is Quadloop, and we'll have Dozier present that for us. Hi, Dozier, take us around.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Dozier.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not able to, on my camera, because I'm actually in transit. But I think I could just do that if that works. But yeah, I'm actually, and it's raining heavily here in Lagos. I mean, the climate change is really, really getting crazy here by the day. So I don't know if it's okay for me to turn off my camera and while I make my presentation.
Okay, Dozier, please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to be talking around what we do at Quadloop and what inspired the company, and a lot more of what we are about to do in the nearest future. Right, so let me start by saying Quadloop is actually a clean tech company that leverages electronic waste to produce products such as solar lanterns, solar home systems, locally here in Nigeria, right? One of the reasons why we started this is because we understood that in our country, most of the appliances we have are mainly imported from China, right? So we decided as a team to see how we could produce locally made Nigerian electronics. And we decided to pick renewable energy because it is a trending sector. So one of the problems we faced when we started early was the fact that we couldn't really get raw materials, affordable raw materials. We tried to import some components from China. Looking at the exchange valuation, it wasn't favorable at all. So we decided to look inward. At first, we were just getting laptop batteries, and we were trying to see how the Second Life use case can make a business sense. And to our greatest surprise, we built our first prototype back in 2018, which was just a lantern that was powered using discarded laptop batteries. And amazingly, we sold, right? Targeting hospitals in rural developing areas that typically depend on portable generators was our target market. And they find it very, very interesting. and they were willing to pay. So although we got funny feedback at that early stage, most of them were not really working very fine during maybe 3 months, 4 months down the line. So we had to go back to the drawing board to iterate on that, right? And that was before I haven't heard of the word circular economy. So in 2019, I did a short course on Udemy on circularity, and that opened my mind to understand how we could actually leverage more ways to build better products in a more sustainable, circular way. That is what brought us to where we are now, which is the flagship product, which is the Dunu, still the solar lantern product. I'm sorry for the noise because the rain is really heavy where I am. It's crazily heavy, and I'm just in the car there. So yeah, we are currently utilizing 70% of e-waste to build our product. Our product is used from discarded monitors, plexiglass, laptop screens, laptop batteries, down to the screws. We reuse wires from discarded television screens. We reuse them to connect the circuit board and all that, right? One of the unique things is that we designed this product with circularity. That is, when the battery gets to end of life, you could swap the batteries for a token, right? So this is what we've been doing. And so far, we already have the patent for this product. I'm currently heading to the Standard Organization of Nigeria office because I have a meeting with them. We want to collect our certification for SON here in Nigeria that allows us to actually sell this product to a wider market. This is where I'm actually headed to, and that's why I'm where I am now. So one of the problems we face currently is trying to get skilled hands, because most people in Nigeria don't really find hardware interesting. People just want to walk around ACEAs, that software as a service, platform business model. You know, people just want to prefer services. But products in Nigeria really has, especially hardware products, it really is really something that a lot of people are not willing to dive into. But we are trying to create an awareness around climate change to make people understand that, hey, you're not just doing this for yourself, like as a means of income, but of course you're doing it for the environment as a whole, right? These are more and all the things we try to make people understand what we are doing in Quadloop and make them to be encouraged to join the team, right? I would say when we started as far back as 2016, we started as an R&D company. Then we were just trying to see how we could build products for people living in a rural developing area. Because back then I was a telecom field engineer, and during the installation of solar hybrid system, I found out that most of the areas that we were installing these solar systems for the telcos were really rural areas that these guys don't have lights. So there was this typical scenario that happened, particularly in a town in southwest Nigeria, where there's a portable, a shop that has a portable generator that gets connected to a gas station, right? The gas station supplies the generator with fuel, and people from the community go out there every day to charge their phone and lanterns, right? That made me was like, hey, why can't we build something that would allow these people be free and actually harness the abundance of waste, abundance of sunlight they have in their community, is as opposed to pay as low as 100 naira, but it's not a sustainable model, right? Paying 100 naira every day for 30 days is about, 3,000 naira, right? So I was like, in this rural community, we can build something that will make people, get value for whatever it is they need. So this is how we started to design products that will meet the rural community. I would like to talk a little bit about how our product is circular, right? The design for the product, like I said, the batteries can be swapped like a remote control. Because we are using second life cells doesn't typically mean it will last for 7 years. The second life cells have a lifespan of about 3 to 5 years, right? But we are giving out this product with a 1-year warranty. But when it gets to end of life, all the areas that we are selling our products, we have a service center there, like a small kiosk that allows us to swap the battery for a fee. When the battery gets to end of life, you bring the batteries to the lantern to us with the batteries in it. Then we'll take out the batteries and give you a fresh one for a token, and now take the batteries back to the e-waste collector company. We are currently working with HICNI Hickney Associates is the company that we are working directly with. They supply us our raw materials in terms of plexiglass, batteries, wires, screws, and even we share the same workspace because they accommodated we met up with the CEO of Hickney and we discussed about our business plan and they find it rather interesting. So they gave us a shared space in their warehouse, which is where we operate. So we don't really have any problems about bringing in the raw materials because we're already where the raw materials are. All we need to do is to process them to make a entirely different product of value. Thank you.
Thank you, Dozie. Thank you so much. Another inspiring story. What I saw about your story was turning the lime that life threw at you to your lemonade. So you saw the challenge and then you tried to make something out of it. And the learning process you had to go through because you didn't know about the circular economy, and then building circularity into your products and the collaboration bits to get your projects to where you are now. It's great to hear from these case studies. And as we go, we can reference them as we go through the session. But this was just to set the tone for us to see what is currently happening, examples of amazing stories or amazing initiatives that are ongoing on the continent. So before we get into the panel discussion, I would encourage us all, I see the questions coming in, please continue putting the questions into the chat and we'll take them during the Q&A. Someone is there collecting them. And so it's time to have our panelists speak. And I'm going to let them go around the table and introduce themselves. And so I would like to start with Susan, since we've already seen her. Susan, can you please introduce yourself and tell us more about what you do? Thank you.
Okay, right. Well, I think I should have had my biography ready to kind of rattle it off, but I think the key connection I have with e-waste goes a long way back. As early as 2007, I was actually coordinating the affairs of the Southern African E-Waste Alliance, which was one of the voluntary e-waste associations in South Africa. And this is where I got quite a lot of appetite for electronic waste. And then a few years down the road, I started collaborating quite closely with the Swiss World Resources Forum. We developed actually an ISO document on sustainable recovery of secondary metals. And then that led me into an assignment more recently. It's now phase 2. South Africa only joined really last year in the phase 2 in the SHREE project, which is a global project in 5 countries held at the same time. We have all the same outcomes. And it's quite a very high level project. So my job, it's quite nerve-wracking and exciting, is to assist our government to develop an e-waste policy for South Africa. So a standalone e-waste policy for South Africa. And then also to develop norms and standards, which would be minimum technical and operational requirements for every operator in the value chain. Also promoting and enabling informal sector integration. It's very important. And the idea is really that we unblock current bottlenecks that really create entry spaces for SMMEs. Meanwhile, obviously also mitigating against any potential risks coming from e-waste. So basically norms and standards that are directly related to the risk of the operation and not just a blanket approach like we have at the moment, which kind of, makes it very difficult with waste management license requirements and things like that. Yeah, on a local level, the SHREE project works in Ilembe in KwaZulu-Natal, where we are actually focusing on also informal sector integration. The other opportunity that we look at is adding value to developing current curriculum development. There are 2 CETAs in South Africa, mixed CETA and EW CETA, that have now started to develop curriculum outlines for e-waste. One is a more advanced one on the operational level for a recycler. The other one I'm very excited about is e-waste entrepreneur. So a lot of what Tracy was saying is really ringing true as well. It's a modular approach. You start with collection skills, basic skills, then you can move on to learn how to do basic dismantling. But you also get in the final module the business skills, because I think it needs to come in a package like that. Yeah, and then also the exploration of solutions of hazardous waste. So we're working close with academia, with UCT, UWC, UKZN, all our beautiful academics, with University, UJ Pete's, sorry. And, we're all working also on research related to e-waste on a triple bottom line. So, what are the possibilities from a technical perspective? UCT is very strong on this. What are the social implications of e-waste? How can social implications be mitigated or promoted, make people benefit? UWC is very strong on this. So yeah, that's basically me in a nutshell related to e-waste. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan, for the introduction. Next, I would invite Ire. Ire, kindly introduce yourself and tell us about you.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Ire Kutan, and I have been in academia for the past 12 years. My research basically has revolved around electronic waste, the disposal management, not just in Nigeria, but in sub-Saharan Africa. So for the past 8 years, what I have done is to monitor through research the applicability of or the management of e-waste, not just in the informal sector, but also the formal sector. So basically trying to determine how we can formalize the informal sector and see if there are any gaps or anything that African countries can learn from each other in ensuring that there is a circular economy approach towards electronic waste. So I look forward to discussions on this later.
Thanks, Ire. It's nice to have you here. Next, would like to have Israel introduce himself. Hi, Israel.
Thank you, Deborah. My name is a recycler. I work with e-waste recycling as a research and operations supervisor. My background is chemistry. As for me, I'm just the guy in the field that gets his hands dirty and trying to find out what can be done with recycling of electronic waste. My interest in circularity is basically on the recycling side, looking for the more sustainable ways to manage electronic waste. And that is exactly the purpose of e-waste recycling. We receive electronic waste from several collectors and business corporations, and we dismantle and recycle them in a responsible way. And the fractions that we get, especially the hazardous fractions that we get, we treat them, and the ones we can't treat within Nigeria, we expect them for further treatment. That is basically my story. And
Israel sound seems a bit fragmented, so I'm not sure if it was only me, but it wasn't clear what Israel said. Israel, I'm sure it has to do with the internet. We'll get back to you later. But nice to have you here. And we'd have Dozier and Tracy, who shared their case study earlier. They would also be joining the panel discussion. And so, like we mentioned earlier, we'd have the panel discussion and then we'd follow with the Q&A and answer the questions that you've dropped in the chat. So during the panel discussion, please drop your questions into the chat. And then after the Q&A, we'll have an open discussion where people can just unmute and speak like an open mic and speak to issues they would prefer to speak to instead of just dropping in the chat. So thank you. And back to my panelists, thank you. And it's nice to have you all here. Like Susan said earlier in her opening presentation, e-waste is one of the fastest growing waste streams, especially not just in the world, but also in Africa. And it's rather interesting that irrespective of the fact that Africa does not produce a lot of e-waste, we end up, most of some major countries on the continent end up with a lot of e-waste because they are being dumped here, and that's a lot of issue. And so when we talk about the e-waste, there are, to me, or from what we have all said from the beginning, there are key areas that I feel this e-waste in circularity wants to focus on. One is how to capture the value in the waste materials and how to prolong the usefulness of equipment so that they are not thrown away. And then how to think about the production right from productions, the design right from production so that they are circular in nature. And then finally, the health concern, because e-waste has a lot of potential to affect the health of people when it's not handled correctly. And so this is what our panelists are going to speak to, because most of them or all of them have hands-on and intellectual experience on these things. So I would like to ask Susan first. What do you think are opportunities in the e-waste sector that you think we can harness on the continent of Africa so that we can retain the value of these waste materials that we see all around us?
Well, if you are acquainted to the value hill that our colleagues at PPL Netherlands once brought into the arena, there are 3 business models. So the circular economy can take place according to 3 different business models. One is on product innovation. I'm obviously personally most excited about the product innovation aspect because it's the most innovative angle from the circular economy perspective. Unfortunately, our OEM manufacturer sits very much outside of Africa. Africa is a net importer. We don't really produce a lot of products and definitely not OEMs of electronics. But having said that, and in preliminary discussions, we still think we can add quite a bit of pressure onto our producers because we have now those EPR systems. And if you look at EPR regulations, for example, there is some scope to ask for life cycle performance. And as my colleague Piotr just reminded me, in Europe is now the discussion going on and a decision was made that all cables have now to be uniform, which makes complete sense. I mean, the amount of e-waste that you generate just by having a different ending on your cable. So I think now already African countries that are busy introducing EPR and try thinking about the more proactive kind of requests, they should actually light a fire on that regard and saying, we will spell out specific design requirements as well, saying in our EPR regulations, producer must show to us actively that whatever is designed is not designed for the dump, that it has that it doesn't unnecessarily create e-waste in terms of whatever accessories you use or like a cable. So there's some scope. And then the next big thing I'm getting excited about is obviously what Tracy is doing and what I think is a huge potential that we have in Africa, which is really saying we need to create, based on our socioeconomic profile, low-cost, high labor-intensive operations. We have lots of people. We want lots of meaningful engagement. And for me, people picking up litter on the street is not good enough. I would like to really see that we become an excellent, service excellent in Africa in terms of providing that link to become actually the value-adding partner in the global value chain, so that anything that is concerning prolonging the lifespan, recovering functionality over materials, I would like to see Africa really put its foot down and actually playing a more prominent role in terms of developing co-working facilities where this type of value add can happen. And then finally, the value recovery from waste. It's the material recovery value. We're sitting, unfortunately, in a situation where all of the valves that comes from e-waste goes very much overseas to Europe, and I know because I'm European. And this is not good enough. So we argue that we don't produce enough e-waste per country to justify end processing facilities, but I think that is where we need to start discussing in an Ubuntu spirit and perhaps create regional solutions. In my mind, we should have 4 regional solutions: West Africa, Southern Africa, Eastern Africa, and actually put our money together to have local regional end processing facilities, which would mean that we can retain the value of e-waste also in Africa. So this is what I would like to see. Thanks.
Oh, thanks, Susan. That's interesting. And I like the last point you were making about not arguing that we don't produce enough waste, the need to position ourselves as a continent, as a global value-added partner in the global value chain, so that we are harnessing all the opportunities that we have currently. I would like to invite Israel. So Israel was part of a research that was trying to see how waste compensation systems can help to reduce e-waste in the on the continent. And I would like to hear from him what they saw in that research and what you think that EPR, what effect that EPR will have on the continent. Hi, Israel.
Hello, everyone. Apologies. Like those years said, it's raining in Lagos and sometimes it gets to affect the network. Okay, so I would just like to talk about waste compensation a little bit. And before I start to talk about it, there's a 2-minute video that I would love to be shared. Maybe the link will be shared in the chat, so you can just look at it after the session. I need to be online for about an hour after this whole Zoom call. So waste compensation is just, I like to call it a tool, and it is a tool that provides funding for recyclers and collectors of electronic waste. Now, the way it works is you approach a buyer that is like a corporate buyer, for example, KPMG, and then maybe they want to purchase electronics for their business. For example, say desktops, 10,000 or 8,000 desktops for their business. And then they now would have to pay a fee to compensate for how much desktops they are putting into the environment. And that would then help to take off the same amount of desktops from the environment. That is, you already have desktops in the environment. You find them in the dump sites, especially in Nigeria. You find a lot of electronic waste in the dump sites because there is no sufficient collection going on. And then companies like that will have to pay a fee to take those things off the dump sites and off the environment. And that is exactly how it works. And that fee will then enable the collectors to actually buy this waste off the environment, because a lot of people actually hoard electronic waste. In a country like Nigeria, waste is being imported. And it's because there's hardly anything that anyone can do because we have a very large secondhand market. So amongst the secondhand goods that come in, one way or the other, waste tends to find its way creeping in through the borders of such a country. And then when you have a big secondhand market, how do you take care of what happens at the end of life? So this is exactly what happens. And in a country like Nigeria, there are only 2 identified formal recyclers in Nigeria, and Nigeria as a whole produces about 461,000 tons of electronic waste per year, and that's just one report. I'm pretty sure it is much more than that. And a recycler like ours, Inkley E-Waste Recycling, we only process about 500 tons per year, and the same can be said for the other formal recycler, which is the ITER. So, I mean, if combined, both recyclers are actually processing about 1,000 tons of electronic waste per year, and Nigeria produces about 461,000 tons. What happens to the whole 460,000 remaining? This is a very huge problem, and it means that all of that waste goes through the informal network, and we know what the informal network does with the waste. They do not process it in a responsible manner. They take out the valuables for them, and they dump what is not valuable. They just dump it. The hazardous fractions, they do not care about processing. They just dump it anyhow they want. And responsible recyclers like us, we need to have funding to be able to process hazardous materials, because at the end of the day, when you look at the value that you get from waste, for example, I usually make an example. I usually use desktops for an example because it's much easier. When you dismantle a desktop, you find about 5 items out of it. In Nigeria, just the iron, you can sell just the metal casing in a desktop. You can sell that to the metal industry in Nigeria, and that one is clean. That's a responsible way to do it. But then you have fractions like the PCBs, the circuit boards, which there is no responsible way to recycle or process such a fraction. And then how do you process that? In the informal network, what they do is they dump that circuit board in acid, which is not safe for the environment. It is not safe for the people that are doing it. So things like that, we then have to export, such a fraction to a company outside Nigeria in Europe, for example, where they can actually process such a fraction responsibly. And to do that, you then have to go in line with the Basel Convention. You then have to pay some shipping fees. You then have to pay processing fees. And who's going to take care of all of that cost? And that is why waste compensation came up. And I would like everyone to, watch the video. It's a 2-minute video, just explains what waste compensation is all about. And that is all from me for now. Thank you.
Awesome. That's interesting, the points you make. And I think something kept coming up for me, just maybe because I've also had interest in the informal sector with the work I do. But you made mention of we the responsible recyclers. And so I would not want to comment so much about it, but it's like we have the informal workers who are doing so much. Should we just cast them off?
Yeah, now the thing is, you cannot, there's no reasonable way to do it. The only thing you can do is train them and formalize them. And that is happening now in Nigeria, especially on the collector side. We have a lot of informal collectors. They just buy waste and sell waste to other collectors, right? So the only thing that we call them NESRA, is a regulatory body in Nigeria. It's a federal regulatory body in Nigeria. And what they do is they formalize some collectors. So they train them, give them protective equipment, and then they teach them what to do and how best to handle waste. So you can only formalize the informal sector. You cannot necessarily keep them out. Of course, there'll be a point where you would have to strong arm them into doing best practices and all that. But you have to gradually assimilate them into the responsible side of waste management.
I think our moderator just disappeared. Peter, perhaps you want to take over. I just want to mention something. It's a two-handed sword. I'm very much, from a social perspective, very much for the informal sector integration. First of all, I don't think we can formalize the informal sector. The informal sector is what it is, and 90% of all the e-waste in Africa is actually managed by the informal sector. It's the most efficient way e-waste can be collected anywhere. So if we can actually figure out how to create an enabling environment while creating the right financial incentives for the people to not fiddle around and actually try to extract value fractions, then I think we are on a winning wicket, okay? And I think this is where the power of EPR comes in, for example, because if you can actually really make sure that EPR can reach the last mile contributors as well, and if the message goes out from the recyclers to the collectors, say, if you bring equipment that you find and you get the best price, if you bring it in its complete form, we will completely turn around the current finance system where the recyclers basically are the cherry pickers and say, okay, you bring us only the printed circuit boards, we don't ask any other questions, and you get the best price. That obviously sets silently an incentive for those collectors to actually start fiddling around and doing actually illegal activities with the e-waste. Okay. The other big thing sorry, let me just finish. The other thing that we are concerned about and have seen rising incidences is data security issues, data theft. So as much as I want, informal collector people to integrate them, we need to think very careful about it. Co-working facilities as a space where they can safely dismantle is important. Recyclers that offer their premises for them to come on site is very important, but we need to also think very hard about the data security issues, specifically when it comes to ICT equipment. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll just like to add to what you said, Susan, that so what we did with the Econ project was that we identified a collector who also had some other informal collectors under him, and then we had to engage him, we had to pay him to get the waste out. And we gave them a condition, that is to give us the waste intact. They are not to scavenge it, they are not to take anything out of it. Give us the waste intact. And that was what we did with computer monitors and TV screens, flat panel monitors and TV screens. So give us the waste intact, the way it is, the way you get it from the market. Do not take off the board, do not take off any other thing. Just give it to us and then we'll take care of it. And then we pay them, to get it off the market.
And that's exactly, and I don't want to hog the discussions, but the norms and standards we currently develop with government, we try to painstakingly separate the activities. A collector is a collector is a collector, The job is to take the stuff from A to B with motorized or non-motorized vehicle, doesn't matter. But you know, the moment it comes to dismantling, a totally different set of norms and standards needs to apply. And I think that is the key to it, to really have those minimum requirements assessed according to the real activities taking place. Yeah.
Thank you, Suzanne and Israel. We will wait for Deborah to come back, but let me take over moderation and ask, move a bit the discussion upper in the waste hierarchy. Yeah? When we speak about waste pickers, we think about waste, but waste pickers or informal sector can also very well do repair. And that's what Tracy very well explained. And Tracy, there were lots of comments during your presentation, you know, how inspiring. But one question is, because it seems that you do it, TBC does it in spite of the lack of supporting legislation, right? How would you say, how would you assess a situation where helping legislation would be in place in some countries that would really enable repair for informal also sectors? Because we don't always want to only have the formal accredited repairers, but there are also a lot of, especially in the informal sector, informal repairers that can do the same thing. But what they need access to the repair manuals, they need spare parts, affordable and quickly. So how would you elaborate, maybe if you can, on the legislation? Is it possible at this stage in some countries, maybe some African countries are spearheading legislation to enable repair?
Yeah, so obviously I don't know too much about the actual detail of the legislation, because I have found it quite hard to navigate through this whole process. And fortunately, we've got a good relationship with Suzanne, so she's helped us a lot to understand where we fit within the picture. But what I have noticed is that the conversations are happening now, also with the extended producer organizations. They're taking on that responsibility. So they are now being able to share the information in a much clearer way, so we understand where we fit within that. And when we understand where we fit, that's helping us to feel confident about what we're doing. And it's also encouraging people sometimes to do the right thing. We need a bit of a nudge. And this is nudging, it is nudging the producers to do the right thing. So that's definitely been helpful. So look, it's still a very early part of the journey, but we are already seeing value in it. We're already seeing conversations happening. And we're all speaking a very similar language, which is very helpful. And it's always important to have ambassadors out there like ASEAN, making the noise, having these conversations with all levels in the government, corporates, et cetera, et cetera. And we've always noticed that the collaboration, when you collaborate between like a non-profit, a corporate and government, that's when you see a lot of change happening very quickly. So this is a very good process. And as I said, sometimes we've got to be like pushed in one direction to make the healthy decisions, because people have got a lot on their plate. I mean, corporates also have to make profits and run their businesses. That's kind of their core focus. So it's important to also have these conversations.
Thank you, Tracy. So I understand that you do support the bottom-up approach when producers and the society and organizations like ACEAs and other grassroots organizations are acting. And that can also happen quickly because, yes, there is a value in those materials. But probably legislation could at least not be an obstacle in some cases and further enable this. Yes, I'm not sure because, Deborah is back. Let's maybe, as you want, Deborah, to continue with the questions or.
Hello, thank you so much for filling in for me. I think I missed most of what you've been saying and what the response were to the informal sector question, but I see a lot being said around the EPR, which we could pick on that later. I wanted to also engage Ire before we go ahead. Ire has a strong interest also with the informal workers, and from the work she has done so far, how she thinks that informal workers can be integrated into the value chain so that they are not left behind, but we are getting as much value from them and we are taking them along to be able to get to that circular end that we want to get to. So Ire, what do you think?
Hi, Deborah. Thank you so much. And I'd like to thank Israel, Suzanne, and Tracy, and Piotr so far. In answering this question, the thing we need to understand is that the EPR scheme and a PRO is not a one-size-fits-all to solving this problem of formalizing the informal sector. What the PRO can do is to put everybody together under one umbrella to try to find a solution and dialogue and all that, but that's not the solution. We need to first of all understand how much are the informal recyclers earning per day as a result of the dismantling, refurbishing, repair, handling of these e-waste components. For us to be able to formalize the informal sector and get these informal recyclers or informal persons of the sector to align with what the government wants or what private recyclers want, we need to understand how much they make and create incentives to make sure that they are able to work in tandem, not just with the government, but with innovators like Tracy and Dozier, right? So first of all, we need to start talking about partnerships. We have to move beyond PROs and an EPR scheme and look at what works in reality. Israel's idea about waste compensation, very important, but we need to also set out clearly what the responsibility of each person is. You need someone for people from the Informal Recyclers Association or formal recycling sector to be able to assist an organization or a company like Quadloop to get the raw materials it needs to continue producing sustainable solar lanterns and lamps. For you to do that, there has to be an agreement between Dozier, for example, and this informal sector to say, this is what you're going to get. These are the incentives. Secondly, we only have two major recycling companies, and I'm going to focus on Nigeria here. Two major private recycling companies in Nigeria, which is Itera and Hinkley. And they are based in Lagos State, Nigeria. We haven't started speaking about the other 35 states in the country. They can't handle every single thing that has to do with e-waste recycling. So the informal sector needs to be part. So my advice is, start creating avenues for discussions, awareness, partnerships between private innovators like Dozier, like Tracy. Discuss with them, especially for sub-Saharan Africa. And like Susan already mentioned, we need to have regional initiatives where we really speak to this informal sector and say, you know what, this is why we need you to do this. This is why we need you to have partnerships with these people because of the effects of your dismantling these components of e-waste on your health and on the environment in general. I'll speak more about initiatives we can take when it's time for questions and answers. Thank you.
Okay, that's interesting. I heard collaboration, and I heard I saw something pop up from Susan about why do we need, or why are we obsessed about formalizing the informal sector. I want to pick up on that later, but I want to bring back Tracy. So Tracy, you have seen collaboration and partnership, and that has been like a core aspect of the work you do. What do you think is the interesting part, or what do you think it is about this creating collaboration and partnerships that would be able to move informal sectors and even in the e-waste sector to achieve what we want to achieve? And then if do you also think that we need to formalize the informal sector? Because from the example you shared, you had this case study story. I don't know if that person would now be classified as a formal person or a formal operator. So what do you think about it, Tracy?
Yes, so with the collaboration, that's where you've got to understand the landscape and find a win-win solution. So for example, how we're also contributing to our power partners, our retail partners, is we are doing reverse logistics for them. So we're going to their DCs and collecting all this waste material. So it's also helping them in that sense. In the South African context, you can claim enterprise development points on your BE scorecards, because these are all obviously enterprise development programs that we're working on. So it's very much about building a win-win relationship and understanding also the needs of your partners as well as people that you're working with. I wouldn't say we're focusing on the informal economy in a sense when it comes to collecting waste. We're focusing on this huge chunk of unemployed South Africans who have got like so much potential and have education, et cetera, just need to be linked to opportunities. We're focusing a lot on that big chunk there. So it's connecting people with linking people to opportunities. I understand also in the informal sector, also trying to feel that space, and it's something you need to really deeply think about, because people have all got potential, absolutely, but it is a different, the waste collectors is slightly different to the target that we're focusing on right now.
Right, thank you so much. I guess the aspect of linking people to opportunities, it strikes me as having some form of middleman in between the informal operators and then the formal operators. And then we can talk about that collaboration where people are moving and working together. But I don't know if Dozier is still around here. I wanted to hear from him. He is the operator. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Oh, right. Okay.
It's not here.
Can you hear me? Hello? Hi, Israel. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I don't think it is right.
Okay. Am I the one breaking or you are? Because I guess it's me.
It's not you. It's for everybody.
It's for everybody.
Yeah, I think so.
Wow. Never seen this one.
Maybe, Deborah, let's move on with another question, because we couldn't hear Israel very well. Or does he?
Yes,
Can you
I
hear me
was
at all?
checking if Dozier was. Hi, Dozier.
Dozier is not here.
Okay.
Deborah,
If
sorry.
it's not here,
Deborah
we'll
Dozier is not
continue.
here, so you can go on.
That's fine. That's fine. Hello.
No, Deborah, Dozier is not here, so we have to move on to another question.
Yes, I think the network is delaying because I've moved away from here. Okay. Yes, all right, thank you. So I guess then the question would be about this middleman issue that we are talking about. Do you think that we have that potential of engaging people so that we are not necessarily formalizing them, but then we are getting the informal sector to participate and contribute to the whole journey of transitioning to a circular economy? Susan, I don't know if you want to contribute to this very point.
Sorry, I tried to get a report out. I apologize. I tried to find this really interesting report where a South African recycler has actually done very successful informal sector integration just by providing access to their premises and, you know, and letting them do what they want to do and then paying them fairly. I will endeavor to find the report. The recycler's name is Desco, and it has been well documented by STEP in a report. And I'd like to share this with you, but I can't find it now and I haven't listened, so I apologize. Deborah, will you just ask me again the same question that you had? Sorry.
Yeah, I was asking what you think about the informal sector, formalizing the informal sector, and how best you think we can integrate them if we don't need to formalize them.
No, I really honestly, that's what I try to allude to, that the whole notion of formalizing an informal sector comes obviously from a formalized society that thinks everyone needs to be formalized. You know, I mean, if I look, for example, how businesses are between Europe and Africa, I mean, Africa is actually marked by entrepreneurs, by people with a side hustle. And, you know, this is just the formal people that pay taxes. They also have their side hustles. So I think you know, and being informal is almost a way of life in Africa as well. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, you know, and we should not aspire to try to push those poor people into an 8 to 5 schedule, because it's clearly not working. It didn't work for me, which is why I'm here in Africa too. No, but what I'm saying is, you know, rather create an enabling environment. And there's so much you can do, you know, by actually removing the stigma from the people, by providing them with safe working conditions, a safe environment. So, you know, as Desco did, for example, they have legally compliant facilities. So, you know, provide access to legally compliant facilities. I know that was discussed in Ghana, a co-working facility where people could come, and they have built now one in India, a co-working facility where recyclers can store their stuff, but also where the informal sector can come for the day, hire some tools, get even some training where required, and go about their daily business, you know, and they're still their own bosses, and that is what they will not want to give up, you know. And if they have a babalas, they don't come to work. That is unfortunately, that is the dynamics of an informal sector. It is intrinsically not reliable, and I think we need to play into the strengths of the informal sector, that it's very quick, that it's very effective. You know, I mean, any informal collection system, if you get it going, will beat by miles the costs regarding a formal collection system. And we can reach much, much deeper. So when it comes to countries thinking of releasing stockpiles from e-waste, you know, do it in a smart way to integrate the informal sector, but not by formalizing them, but by perhaps providing them with a BIP that gives them some recognition that they are part of something bigger. But I think that is pretty much an access to the e-waste, you know, that is really what is needed. Yeah, more than anything. And then Tracy, I mean, what you're doing is absolutely astounding, that people that really want to grow business skills over and above it, that there is that kind of space, you know, where you can say, okay, you can actually tell us how far you want to take this. And are you really wanting, you know, to move out of a very informal space into a partly informal space? I mean, we even have a definition for this called unofficial business activities. People are not registered with tax, you know, but still they aspire gradually to get there. And I think we need to keep the pace that, you know, Africa's majority in the informal sector is having. We cannot force this on people with a European kind of mindset, you know, that if we just try hard enough, we can formalize all those people. It's not working.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, thanks, Susan. I think we would want to jump to the Q&A, but then one thing that we couldn't get to is the aspect of health, because I feel even if we are leaving the informal sector to do what they want to do, first off, they are doing it from a perspective of we also need to feed. And so we have to do what we have to do. And then it goes back to affect the environment, some leaching, burning, affecting the environment, and then it will affect the health of people around those places where they do these things. And so I feel these conversations can go on and on. But we are going to stop here. Sorry, were you saying something?
I just think also the EPR regulations are really crucial in terms of providing the financial incentive and to make it very clear to say, here are the norms and standards. We're currently developing them for South Africa. If you want to be a collector that is recognized by the EPR system, those are your minimum technical and operational requirements. And it is stated, and I'm happy to share the draft with anyone else at this stage, to say you cannot do A, B, C, D. You can only do collection and take it from A to B, you know, and that would also create an incentive that they will then, that PROs, you know, would then turn around to the recyclers and say to the recyclers that they contract, okay, you have to now choose, you know, a couple of those reliable guys that you work with over the years, and you take them to the next level and becoming regular contributors to the EPR scheme by doing the collection on the ground. But then they need to sign up to those minimum requirements. No.
Sign on to the minimum requirements. Thank you. We'll just jump into the Q&A. I would start with a question that we have for Tracy. First off, let me thank everyone for the questions you shared in. There are lots of questions here. I hope we can go through all, I'm not sure. But Tracy, so someone is interested about the healing aspect of your program and want to know what that entails.
So are you talking about the personal healing?
Yes, the personal healing.
Okay, yes. So we take everybody on a journey around figuring out where we're all stuck somewhere. We're all stuck in dependency somewhere. We're all humans, we're all hardwired somewhere. And we figure out where we're hardwired. And then we have these wonderful workshops and conversations. And then the coaches help a lot with that. And we can have individual counseling if needs be. But I must say, out of all of this, the most powerful thing and the most impactful thing is actually the new friendships that form. So creating in our environment, creating these social spaces where people can connect and have a cup of tea together, have lunch together, and you find these very strong friendships start forming. And then you're on the same journey together. And there's a lot of healing that takes place there because people start to feel safe. And obviously a lot of people have gone through a lot of trauma. It's real, and that you can't take that away ever, but you can create people an environment where people are feeling that they are safe and that they can start speaking what's happened to them. And particularly in the men's program, you find it quite hard in the beginning because now during coaching, I must now start speaking about my life, but someone's courageous enough to do it. And then you start seeing the friendships and the brotherhoods happening out of that because you start taking care of each other. And we've worked a lot with Itzko Skatema. You should Google him. And he talks about care and growth and how, caring and growing people is how it's connected. And if you're not growing people, you aren't caring. That's also what he talks about there. It's really worth Googling him. He's helped us on our journey.
Right. Thank you. So another also wants to know, saying Tracy, if how your financial mechanism works. Is the project funded by philanthropies or how does it work?
Yes, so we have a combination. So we do have some philanthropy grants, we get them. We also generate some kind of a revenue from the waste materials that are donated to us. So we do charge a certain fee for the items. So for example, in our resale program, we are about 80% self-funded there. In the repair program, it's a bit more challenging. So we do need to find funding for that. And we're wanting to also make the program accredited, the repair program accredited. So we're looking for funding for that because that's also navigating through all the SACPA accreditations is quite difficult. So we're looking for a consultant to do that for us. So it's a bit of a dynamic. And of course, we're a third-party enterprise development service provider. So we're a non-profit. So we can also claim, people who donate to us can also claim enterprise development points. So we've got the corporates, we've got philanthropists, and we're also generating our own revenue.
Okay, right. Then I would go to Israel, and someone is asking, how could we incentivize electronics producers to participate in e-waste compensation schemes?
I don't know if I understand that question. Electronics producers. I don't think we need to incentivize electronics producers. What I think that question is saying is to incentivize collection. So that is like what we've been trying to say. I wanted to say that when Susan was talking about the informal network, what you can do is you incentivize collection. So the collectors the informal collectors, you give them some money and you say, okay, just get us this amount of TVs or monitors or desktops from the markets or from your sources, because they might not want to tell you their sources. And then you give them the money that would sufficiently pay what they want, at their own rate. And then they will take it off and they will do it exactly the way you want it to be. With all the conditions that you've stated, they'll bring it to you. And that is the way to do business with them. It's not necessarily formalizing them totally, but giving them certain conditions with an incentive in mind. And this incentive actually comes from through an EPR system or a waste compensation model. So this is how it works. Money is actually what drives the e-waste business.
Money is what drives the e-waste. That's an interesting statement, but that's quite true. So I'm not sure what this question, but Susan, this person wants to know what you think about the relationship of business models, such as waste compensation and EPR. What do you think is the relationship between these two?
Okay, so I would just like to, they are very similar.
Hello?
Hello?
So I was asking, yeah, Susan?
Oh,
Oh, you were saying something?
No, I think
Yeah.
Israel should go for this because I don't know enough about this waste compensation. I think I know the principle, but he's the expert. So please, I think by all means, please, Israel, take this. Take the.
I wouldn't call myself an expert. I'm learning as well. But I would just like to say that they are really similar in the sense that someone is actually paying for waste, and the person that is paying for waste either puts them in the market or is buying them. So with waste compensation, it's more of the buyers, the wholesale buyers or the big corporations that want to buy bulk units. Because if you come to a normal consumer and tell them to pay waste compensation fee, they won't readily do that. But you know, when you have corporations that have these CSRs and corporate responsibilities, they would readily pay a waste compensation fee that would then surmount the cost of recycling and collecting waste, you know. And then the EPR system is more of who imports the electronics into the country pays, you know, for what happens at the end of life. So they are kind of they are similar, but it's actually just who pays, basically. And then I don't know if you'd like to add anything else.
Yeah, I really think that setting the right financial incentive is key to this. And there's lots of case studies. I mean, we did some work in Ghana as well, and there was a pilot project done with the GIZ and the Eco Institute. You know, there was a lot of burning of cables going on in Agabloshi at the time. So they actually created a financial system where they would actually pay a surplus for not burned cables. And, you know, they provided actually cable strippers that people can then use in, you know, as an alternative. And surprise, surprise, as long as the money was flowing and the surplus was paid for those non-burned cables, you know, this works. This works, you know. I mean, the collectors don't do this because they try to trash the planet. It's just hardcore financial incentive to do the wrong thing. And I think we need to be smart about this. This is really, really important. And then we can really harness the full power of the informal sector if we set the financial marketing instruments correct. And, you know, and that is the one thing, and I'm very pleased about that one thing, that our government in South Africa made an official statement, and I see Katerina alluded to the fact as well. We actually have officially government-approved waste picker integration guidelines. This is huge. This is absolutely huge. And you know, I still think that in Nigeria and in Ghana and wherever else I worked, people are aware, but they are not really, the political plans do not really take cognizance deeply of the reality that's going on in those countries. They have a wish model of what it should be, and it does not, in my opinion, include a lot of informal sector representatives. And I do think that any country who has any attempt in Africa to introduce a working EPR system needs to wake up to the reality that working with the informal sector is absolutely crucial and can make and break your EPR system. I would go even that far.
Okay. Thanks, Susan. There's this question I wanted.
Breaking up, Debbie.
Way to react to our, hello?
Bad connection.
Yeah, I noticed I was out.
But now we can hear.
Am I back now?
Yes.
Yes. So I was asking Ire that there's this question that the person is interested in knowing why we have all this research that is flying around with all the analysis and all that findings that we are getting, but then we are not, that is not reflecting in the donor projects that we want to see. What do you think is causing all of that?
Thanks, Debbie. That's a very interesting question. In sub-Saharan Africa, the problem we have is we don't have a problem with legislation. We don't have a problem with documentation, right? what we have a problem with is putting things into perspective and actualizing and implementing them. So we see a lot of discourse about what should be done, how this should be done, but we also need to understand, most importantly, that the cultural perceptions in sub-Saharan Africa about e-waste in general, its disposal, its management, its handling needs to change. And by saying this needs to change, it means that this involves consumers, informal sector, formal sector. There needs to be probably a bit more awareness about this research and carrying this research to the grassroots or to the informal sector themselves. That's the only way you can actually get practical implementation. There's so much information out there. There is so much legislation, but what are we doing to enforce it? And we need to practicalize it by involving everyone on the value chain. And it's not just about legislation, EPR, PROs. These are fantastic initiatives, but we need to continuously dialogue. We need to continuously create awareness. Social media is a powerful tool about changing people's cultural perceptions. And it's not just, like I said, consumers, but changing the cultural perceptions about or for the informal recyclers. That's my suggestion.
Ire, let me just come to you quickly. If you say we need to carry the research to the informal workers, how do you think we can do this? Any practical steps?
Okay, earlier, Israel mentioned something about the informal recyclers just burning off parts of e-waste, of waste, or rather electrical components that are useful or could be useful. They don't realize that those components could be useful. They only know that this particular component of an electrical equipment or e-waste itself is what they need, and then they burn the rest. Now, what awareness and this research will do is we focus on formalizing, but we're not speaking about the effect on their health and the environment. That's a very important thing that needs to be spoken about more, right? So in achieving a circular economy for e-waste, we need to have all these things put into perspective and brought to the doorstep of the informal recyclers. That's a suggestion.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Deborah, there's just one thing that I haven't raised, and I really hope that someone is listening, because I visited a refurbisher, and in the EPR regulations, refurbishers are included as producer in the producer definition. And I understand this where a refurbisher is putting product on the market. That makes to me perfectly sense. You put product on the market, then you should be under the producer definition. But in South Africa, all the refurbishers now are under producer definition. So a refurbisher who refurbishes product from South Africa is also in the producer definition, and expected to actually join PROs and pay EPR fee. I think that's absolutely insane. And I really also think we actually reaching exactly the opposite of what we should try to reach, which is pushing for the higher CE options, because our EPR regulations do not encourage refurbishment over recycling at all. And in fact, the fact that the people that actually do the value recovery, the functional recovery and prolong the lifespan of equipment are now also punished because they are thrown into this EPR regulation. And I really hope that this is something that will be reviewed by our government, that those refurbishers that are only dealing with e-waste that was already placed on the South African market by another party, that they are not part of this definition anymore. Thanks.
All right, thank you. I want us to jump quickly into the open discussion because we are far behind time. But before we do so, there is this question: is Josie here? I hear you back. Open the, okay. If he's still not here, then we just want to open the floor for people to put their mics on and react. So you can put up your hand if you want to if you want to ask a question. But the question I was going to ask, maybe Israel could still respond to that. It's about collaboration. And someone was interested, and also interested now, in how we can build such collaborations like what Quadloop has with Hinckley, so that how can we build such collaborations so that we are getting a lot more partnerships and working together to achieve a circular economy.
To speak on that, I'll just say that, first of all, like I mentioned earlier, the informal network only care about what they can make, the money they can make from the business. So if you're satisfying them financially, then you can establish a business relationship with them. I mean, at Hinckley, I mentioned that we sell the metal to the metal industry. We don't necessarily take all the metal ourselves to the steel industry. We have an informal collector of metals, right, who already buys from us. And that is a business relationship right there. So if you can satisfy them financially, definitely you would be able to create a relationship with them. All you just need is to state your conditions and they will state their price. And then so far as there's funding somewhere, and so far as you can pay the price, then you have a good business relationship.
All right, thank you for that. So we are just going to move into our open discussion, and it's going to be a conversation, right? And so if you want to speak up, kindly put up your hand, and I would, if there is anything you think you'd want to share, or any question you want to still direct to any of the panelists, please put up your hand and we can take that. This is a conversation, the conversational session of the whole event. Okay, I see Ivy and Faisal. I would like Ivy to speak first. Hi, Ivy.
Hi, Debbie. It's nice to be here and listen to all the great works that everyone is doing regarding electronic waste. I would want to comment a bit about when it comes to the waste management hierarchy and also on the circular economy principles, the fact that recycling is not really the preferred and refurbishment is a bit preferred, but moving very high up the ladder, we are talking about eliminating this waste and pollution in its entirety. At what point within all that we are discussing here do we see Africa achieving those principles of elimination of waste and pollution, especially with the fact that we are still importing waste and all that? And I don't know who this question is directed to. It's probably like a general question. And then my second question is how, if we are moving towards the higher level of circularity, which is elimination of waste and pollution, how do we carry on the job security that comes with the influx of e-waste in our system? For instance, the jobs that we keep creating around electronic waste, should one day these conventions that we have regarding the movement of hazardous waste should be fully implemented, and you're not having electronic waste come down to Africa like we have now, what happens to all the jobs that we are creating around these electronic circular economy when it comes to electronics? So this is just to bring this on the table for us to discuss moving forward how things are going to be. Thank you.
Ivy. Some quite interesting points you've raised there. I don't know if anyone would want to react to her question before we take any other question.
I think there was like 500 questions I rolled up in one. But, in terms of what we can do on the design and on the more proactive side, and that is also where my heart beats, I think as long as OEM manufacturers sit outside of Africa, and they all do, it's quite limited. I mean, we can have a look at waste beneficiation, obviously. I think Africans are very, very good in beneficiating waste. And, it used to be a computer box, and now it's an aquarium. I've seen it all. So this is like product innovation, but it's kind of a second-hand product innovation. I think in terms of really saying, we're going to take out now this this component or this metal because it's harmful. You know, that we have very little reach. However, with legislation and requesting life cycle analysis studies from producers as part of EPR, and perhaps even also you know, saying we request producers to prove as part of the EPR regulations that their products are not deliberately designed for the dump, you know, like that they are created with technical obsolescence in mind. I think there is some groundswell that we can definitely create from Africa. Thanks.
Awesome, thank you. And also just a quick addition, just like we are extracting virgin materials and it's going to get finished, I feel like it's just the same as getting maybe the e-waste, and then it would definitely like come to an end, hopefully, and then things would evolve, because businesses should not be, I mean, they are expected to evolve and grow and change and transition fairly whenever they're supposed to. That's what I also think. Faisal, hi, could you unmute? And if you could kindly keep your question to 30 seconds. And if you're able to put your video on, that would be great. Thank you. I mean, your camera. Hi, Faisal. Did we just lose you? Okay.
Hello.
Right.
I'm Faisal from Ghana.
Hi.
My question has to do with, so earlier this year, I had the opportunity of engaging some stakeholders over a research that was in India. And one of the key take home, or what's the PROs and the informal sectors, they were having a kind of a conflict. The issue here is that they claim what should I call it? The e-waste are not available, while some are claiming, we know research says there's a lot of e-waste available, while this formal sectors who are into the recycling and other activities claim that these e-waste are not available. So I don't know what is the situation here in terms of Africa to those who are engaged in it. The second question I would like to ask is, what do we think voluntary standards, or let's say responsible recycling standards, can do to promote this idea of circular economy within our African continent, to promote circularity and ensure recycling activities are best taking place? I know in countries like India, you have SERI, which tries to engage with these informal sectors and formal sectors and recycling activities. I don't know if some of these activities are taking place within the African system as well. Thank you.
Can I say something quickly? I don't want to hog the stage, but I feel very strong about this. Being a German, right? I actually cannot believe the double standard that OEMs have. I mean, they are bound to very strict requirements since 2002 in Europe with the e-waste directive, for example. They will not do anything on a voluntary level. I think this is actually really wishful thinking. You know, they're looking at the bottom line, and I know that sounds now really mean to the producers, but if they can find a legal loophole where they don't have to fulfill any take-back obligations, they will take it, okay? So I'm quite skeptical and cynical about it, that how far a voluntary agreement can be reached. And I can share with you that there was now just a position paper published by STEP and the WE Forum that is now seriously putting up discussions on what would it take to have a global EPR system. Because the truth is, you know, like water, you know, the producer looks where the weakest link is, and that is exactly what those people get. So I have a term for it. I call it actually environmental racism. So if you have a country, you know, that has a weak legal framework, they will not come and offer you any voluntary services of take back or EPR obligations. They will wait until they have to. That is my experience. Thanks.
Right. All right. Anyone else wants to react to that question, or we take another question? Then I would call Abdul Hakim. Sorry, if you can kindly unmute. If you're unable to, we could go to Simon while we wait for Abdul. So hi, Simon.
Yeah, hello? Hello?
Ah, right, you're here.
Okay, yeah, good day, everyone. It's been quite an interesting and insightful session. I've actually learned a lot. So kudos to all the speakers. I've actually learned a lot from everybody, especially our take on the informal waste sector. It has been a concern for myself. Seriously, if you look at it, these guys are put to be, for me, if you look at it, they are the pioneer of waste management in Africa. If you're doing, for instance, I'm in Nigeria. I'm calling it from Nigeria. So if you look at the waste cycle, the recycling waste collectors that we have here, most of them came around, say 5 to 10 years ago. But most of these informal waste collectors, you have people that they are 40, 30 years old and they were born in the business. Their parents did it in the days of the iron and now plastic and all that. So I think rather than try to eradicate and cancel them, or we should try and work with them. We should try and work with them. We shouldn't try and take the business from them. So that's for the waste, the informal waste collectors. So there's a lady that actually asked the question. So I would like to quickly respond to that about our circular economy principle 1, which is elimination of pollution and waste. So for my own understanding, with all due respect, so the future that we're clamoring for, it's not going to be a future without waste. It's just that the concept of waste will be different from what we have now. Because if you like it or not, there's no way you have a product that will not have end of life. At a point, products will have to either expire, will have to be retrieved and all that. But it will not be the way we have it now, whereby products are not durable, they are not built to last, they are not built to stay for more than maybe to serve the consumer for long and all that. So we're still going to have these materials, we're still going to have packaging, we're still going to have products, but the concept is what is going to change. So I don't think the future we're going into is a future without waste. It's just a future with a different conception of what we know as waste. Like, and there are different, we have a lot of concepts already going around. There's one about products being a reservoir for resources. Like, products should be seen as a bank for resources. Like, a car should not just be seen as a car. It should be a bank for metal resource and every other component that is used to make it. So that's one. Then again, I would like to also talk on when she mentioned about the closed loop for materials. So yes, the shorter the loop, the better. So we can do more in the area of recycling, but there's still more further up, which is in the area of reuse and repair. And that's where the concept around business models is also coming up, whereby we're not talking about, okay, if I buy a product, can I resell it? Can I lease it? Can we share it as a community, as against the concept around ownership as against individual owning it. So I just wanted to just say some things to that. I hope I've been able to add to the knowledge that we have about it. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and your contribution. So I'll take Susan, and then I think the last person that would be Joseph, and would end the open discussion. I just see Sawa putting your hand up, Sawa. If we get the time, enough would speak to you as well. So hi, Simon.
Hey, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So many lovely discussions, trying to follow in the chat at the same time. But I just wanted to hear if anyone has any guidelines for the PROs, the EPR, when it comes to reuse and repair, when it comes to targets on that. We do have now in the new EPR legislation that is not yet official, but as soon as it is, it mentions reuse, but it has no guidelines, of course. And now I know that Danida just recently had a call out making some guidelines for the EPR, but maybe someone already has some set how to do this in a good way, because what we see otherwise will be collection target and recycling targets the way we do in Europe, for instance, which means nobody will take care of the things properly when collecting. They will just try to get the amounts to reach the targets that are set by authorities. So if anyone has or ideas, and by the way, we'll continue discussing this at our conference in the end of November. Thanks.
Right, thank you. Any reactions to Simon's question?
That is a classical dilemma. That's a classical dilemma. And you know, in our EPR regulations, we do actually have also, I mean, the PROs need to also report on recovery targets, also recovery of material and recovery of functioning. And it is actually, I understand where everyone's coming from, but also one needs to look at the realities. And I learn a lot right now from the recyclers, how e-waste recyclers recycling, what is possible in terms of data capturing. And there's a total disconnect. And then it also, all of the recyclers are actually doing refurbishment in-house as well. So it is very, very hard to capture meaningful data without doubling or tripling statistics. And I have no solution to that, but I'm applying my mind to it right now, Simone. So if you want to talk to me about it offline, I'm happy to share with you anything I can, because I'm busy developing data capturing sheets for all the value for the service providers in the value chain for South Africa. What is it, what a collector should use for data sheets and a recycler? And I actually really hit now the realities of what recyclers collect versus what a collector should collect in terms of data, and what a PRO needs and what the government thinks we should reward to them. You know, it's not gelling together. Yeah, thanks.
All right, thanks for that addition and response. Joseph, let me skip you. Sawa wants to react to Simone, and then Joseph can make your question. So Sawa, kindly take it.
Thank you for this. I'm Sawa calling from Ghana. I would like to react to Simone's question on the reuse of electronic waste. Just this last month, my company EcoCent worked with GIZ e-waste program on how we can upcycle fridges, old fridges, into building egg incubator. So as an innovator and an engineer, we went up to Tamale to train guys, the egg incubator producers, on how they could use e-waste, like the old fridges, as the housing for producing egg incubators. Another example is how we use old phones as CCTV cameras around the house and offices. So the whole question about reuse got to do with how innovative we can be with the waste, with the e-waste that comes out. And we should look at it from the enterprise basis, how we can incorporate this waste into the traditional system of production, like using the fridges for incubators, using the old phones for CCTV cameras, using the lithium-ion batteries for power banks and all that. So it all boils down to innovation that can bring about reuse, upcycling, and recycling of this. That will also look at how we can properly handle this waste from collection. And we'll not only look at volumes to export and all that. With that, we don't only reduce our consumption of natural products or natural raw materials, but how we can incorporate waste or substitute these natural materials with e-waste. So the question boils down to creating an economic condition that have a very strong value chain, and we have to incorporate that into the traditional system of doing things, of production, all revolving around innovation and technology. Thank you.
Thanks, Sawa. So finally, we'll have Joseph speak. Joseph, you can take 1 minute and tell us what you want to say. Thank you. Hi, Joseph. Hi, Joseph.
Oh, okay. That's me. Sorry. I thought you were expecting reactions from other speakers. Thank you very much. You can hear me, Deborah, clearly?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay. My name is Joseph. I'm calling in from Lusaka, Zambia. I'm working with the EU delegation in Lusaka, and I'm working mainly on regional programs. I know a few colleagues like Deborah are aware of what we are planning. So we are formulating a regional program on circular economy to cover parts of Eastern and Southern Africa. And so far, we have pre-identified plastics, packaging, and of course electronic waste. Hence my interest in the. So a lot of very good ideas that are coming through. A lot of case studies on the practical things that are happening in the different countries. I think I've heard a few comments on the regional dimension side, because it's something that we are struggling with in the formulation of this program, to ensure that we have a regional dimension within the region where, you know, countries can maybe win or peer-to-peer learning. But the component that has come through to us is the part on skills development, how to embed the development of skills and have the pivot component within this program. And it will be good to hear, I think maybe practical experiences on how we could bring in the not really formalize, it's just to have, bring in the component of skills and having it probably recognized from the public sector side, and also try to stimulate investments in the different areas, especially in the area of e-waste, and link it to the availability of skills as well. So that's what I thought, because we are struggling a bit on skills, but thank you.
Thanks, Joseph, for that addition. Of course, we need a lot of investments in the e-waste sector. I thank you so much, everyone, for your contribution. I see the chats were so sparked and a lot of questions, a lot of thoughts were being shared. I don't think the time we had was enough to go through everything we had to say, but I'm grateful to have moderated the session, and I hope it was a useful conversation to you. These are conversations that should continue. So of course, please link up to people you'd want to share or continue these conversations with. My key takeaways from today's session, there's been a lot, but then some key takeaways is the fact that the EPR is not a one-size-fits-all, and it cannot save the situation. Just EPR cannot save the situation that we have on our hand. Also, we need to create bridges for informal workers to get through, to integrate, integrated fairly into the value chain of the e-waste sector. And also, we need to position ourselves as Africa as a global value added partners, so that we can be able to add value to whatever we are producing, or to e-waste materials. And then we need to build people, and this came across so strongly from Tracy's examples. And thus, we need to build people, not just building business models and systems, but to build people. And about communication factor, how we need to communicate about the e-waste and let people know about it, and let people, bring people aboard, so that we are all joining this fight to support the e-waste sector to be much more circular. Thank you so much, and I'll hand over to Susan to wrap up the session. And apologies that we had to run about 5 minutes late. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, now people are jumping off quickly, so I'll make it very quick. We see more questions than answers, which is always a good ingredient for an interesting workshop. So those discussions should be continued. The conversations are definitely not stopping yet on e-waste. The one point out, what I want to point out, as you see on the slide, 17th of November is our last circular economy VCEF studio workshop on food systems. So please come there and attend as well. You can always obviously contact us on the VCWEF email, and the address will be shown on the screen. Is it shown on the screen? Yes, it is shown on the screen. And then, yeah, if you can please give us your feedback so we can see what you as participants would like to see more in future workshops, because we are now closing the session and you will see a survey pop up with a few questions. So you will see a survey pop up with a few questions, and it would be tremendously helpful if you let us know and take a minute to complete it. If there's no other questions or contributions, I would like at this point to close the meeting. And on behalf of the entire ACEAN team that worked very hard, I would like to thank all of you again, and I look forward to see you again in the near future. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.